Hello friends, this is Ralph, and in today's video we will take a look at the Behringer 2500 Eurorack modules, so stay tuned. This tutorial caters to two groups of people. Group 1. These are the people who are new to modular synthesis and are contemplating how to start a basic Eurorack system and which modules are required. For these people, the Behringer 2500 modules can be an excellent starting point. Group 2 includes people who already own a Eurorack system and are always looking to add new modules. For instance, another filter module can add a completely new sound flavor to an existing oscillator. For these people, the sound samples provided in my video might be of interest. Before we dive into the tutorial, let's start with some general information about the Behringer 2500 Eurorack modules. The original ARP 2500 was a modular synthesizer introduced in 1970 by ARP Instruments to compete with the Moog modular synthesizer. It had 15 modules including oscillators, filters, envelope generators, sequencer, sample and hold. It used a unique 10x10 matrix switch system for signal routing instead of the patch cables. The Behringer 2500 modules are authentic reproductions of the original 2500 circuitry from the 1970s that can fit into a standard Eurorack case. And since the Behringer 2500 modules are in Eurorack format, they use patch cables instead of the original matrix switch. And now let me give the absolute beginners who are now watching my video a brief introduction to modular subtractive synthesis. Subtractive synthesis is a classic and popular method of sound synthesis that involves starting with a complex waveform such as sawtooth or square wave and then filtering out or subtracting certain frequencies to create a new sound. The basic modules required for subtractive synthesis are oscillators, which create the sound waveform, filters for removing certain frequencies, this is where the subtractive part of the synthesis comes in, envelope generators, which shape the amplitude and the filter behavior of the sound over time, low frequency oscillators that modulate certain parameters of the sound, such as the filter cutoff frequency or the oscillator frequency, and effects such as reverb, delay, chorus, phaser to add depth and character to the sound. By combining these elements, subtractive synthesis allows for the creation of a wide range of sounds, ranging from powerful bass sounds to lush pads and to screaming leads. Of course, there are even more modules such as sample and hold, Ringmodulator, sequencer, but I don't want to overwhelm the beginners with too much information at this point. Now let's proceed with the tutorial and further explanations. The Behringer 2500 Eurorack modules operate on control voltages. This begs the question of how to connect a Midi keyboard, Midi controller or digital audio workstation to the Behringer 2500 synthesizer rig. I'm showing you three options here. Option number 1. You can get a Midi to CV converter module for Eurorack, like the Behringer CM1A. Midi to CV converters convert Midi signals into CV gate signals, which you need to control the 2500 synthesizer modules. Option number 2. You can use a keyboard controller that has a dedicated CV and gate output, something like the Arturia Keystep or the Behringer Swing. You can send the CV and gate signals directly from these keyboards to the Behringer 2500 modules. Moreover, these keyboards also feature MIDI in and MIDI outputs and an onboard sequencer and arpeggiator. Option number 3. You can use the Behringer 2600 as a MIDI to CV gate interface. I have already made a video about this process. If you are interested in how to do this, you may want to check out my tutorial. I put the video link into the description below. Anyway, for today's tutorial, I am connecting my Arturia keystep to the Behringer 2600 Grey Mini via Midi to get the CV gate signal for the 2500 modules. You may ask yourself why on earth I am not using the CV gate outputs directly from the keystep. The Behringer Grey Mini gives me the option to also output a trigger signal apart from the CV and gate. Moreover, I can also use the mixer section of the Grey Mini for the 2500 synthesizer output, and thereby also having the option of using the Grey Mini spring reverb. Regular visitors to my channel know that I am a great fan of the ARP 2600 and the Behringer 2600. If you are a new visitor, then you may want to check out some of my tutorials for the Behringer 2600 and the ARP 2600. Video links are provided in the description below. And now let's jump over to the Behringer 2500 Eurorack modules. Alright, we are looking here now at a bunch of 2500 modules. Here on the left side we have two 2600 VCOs. I am not going to talk about these VCOs in today's video. These VCOs will be the topic of another video that I'm going to do in the future. And here on the right side we have several 2500 modules. So first of all, here we have two oscillators, one filter VCA module, then here we have the dual ADSR envelope generator, here we have the Ringmodulator, the noise generator, the sample and hold module, here the step sequencer, and here the mix sequencer module. But fear not, you do not need all these modules to get started. As a matter of fact, you just need 3 modules. Just 3 modules to get started and to be able to create a pretty powerful sound. For this we are going to use one oscillator here, the Oscillator module 1004, the Filtamp module 1006, this is a VCF and a VCA combined, and the third module is the dual envelope generator module 1003. So the first thing we are going to do now is that we take the output here of the VCA and connect it to our mixer. As you can see, I have already set this up. And now the next step is that we connect the VCO to the filter. For that first thing, we enable here the oscillator and make sure that it is set to high frequency mode. In low frequency mode, you can use it as an LFO. Okay, anyway, you have 5 waveforms. It's sine, it's triangle, it's square, it's sawtooth, and it's pulse. We are going with the pulse waveform. You have switches here with 3 positions. The middle position is the waveform is off. You turn it to the right, you enable the waveform. If you move the switch to the left, then you inverse the waveform. Okay, let's move it here over to the right. And now we take the output here of the oscillator and plug it into the VCF input A. Make sure that you turn up here the input A knob to the right. And now you're not hearing anything. But if we increase the bass volume here of the VCA, you can hear that there is a sound. I had to open the filter as well. If I turn down the bass volume, then there is no sound. I turn it up again. you can hear the sound. Alright, the next step is that we control the pitch of the oscillator. For this, I am taking my external CV signal. You can see I have connected a multiplier here because further down the road I also want to control another oscillator, this one here. So that's the reason why I am using a multiplier. So we connect here a cable to the multiplier which carries our CV signal, and then we plug it here into the keyboard slot of the oscillator number 1. I call this here oscillator number 1, and this I call oscillator number 2. Okay, so when I turn up the bass volume, you hear the sound. Now I play a scale on the keyboard. You can hear that the pitch of the keyboard is already controlling the oscillator number 1. But what we want to do, we also want, when we press the key, that the sound is on, and when we release the key on the keyboard, the sound is off or fades out. For this, we have to engage the envelope generator here. So here is my gate signal. As you can see, I have also connected a multiplier because maybe I also want to use the gate signal at another part here of the modular system. So we take here another cable, plug it into the gate multiplier, and connect it to the gate input slot of the envelope generator module. Okay, so now we have to connect the envelope generator with the Filtamp module. For the sake of simplicity, we start with just the first ADSR here. ADSR stands for attack, decay, sustain, decay. That's another word for envelope generator. So you hear me sometimes use the phrase envelope generator and sometimes ADSR. I use these terms interchangeably. Okay, so we take here the output, the positive output of the envelope generator, the first row here, and plug it into CV in input. So this knob corresponds to the VCF. So I move it roughly to this position, and then we also turn up CV1 on this knob here, which corresponds to the VCA section. So now when I press a key, you can hear that the keyboard is now controlling the gate and the envelope generators. So with this knob here, now I'm controlling the frequency of the filter. And this knob here is controlling the volume, the VCA. Alright, so now let's move on and make this sound a little bit more powerful. We have another look here at the VCO. I press a key, and when I move this knob here, with this knob I change the width of the pulse. When I move this knob back and forth, you can hear that there is some kind of chorus effect. So, and this we are going to use to make the sound more powerful. Now we take the negative output of the first ADSR here. Just let me remind you, just this ADSR is controlling both the filter and the VCA. We are not using the second ADSR at the moment. We are just working with the first ADSR. So we take the negative output of this ADSR row and plug it here into the VCO slot PWM, which stands for pulse width modulation. Here I press a key. This is setting the width of the pulse, and here this knob determines the intensity of the pulse width modulation. So this is now with pulse width modulation, the ADSR controlling the pulse width modulation. And here it is without. So you can hear the slight chorus effect, which makes the sound more powerful. But now we engage another waveform here on the first VCO, the sine wave. We move the position slider to the left, and you can hear that the sound has gotten more volume, more thickness. So let me recap what we have done here. We have just one ADSR controlling the VCA and the VCF, and then also the negative output of the ADSR is controlling the pulse width modulation. So now let's move on by introducing oscillator number 2. We move the enable switch to the right, set it to on. Now you can see it's on. The red LED light is shining, and we also make sure that it is set to high frequency mode. Okay, we are going for a sawtooth waveform, and now we have to control oscillator number 2 also with the CV output signal. So here is my CV multiplier. I connect another cable to the multiplier. This is our CV signal, and plug it here into the keyboard slot of oscillator number 2. Okay, so then we have to make sure that we take the output of oscillator number 2 and plug it here into input B of the VCF VCA module. Okay, so we also have to make sure that we turn this input B knob to the right, that the signal can flow from the oscillator to the Filtamp module. Okay, now I press a key on the keyboard. This is just one oscillator, number 1. And here it is with oscillator number 2. You can slightly detune the oscillators to add some kind of chorus effect. Just a little bit is enough. the moment, we are just using one envelope ADSR to control both the frequency of the VCF and the volume of the VCA. So let me recap what we have patched here. The positive output of the ADSR is going into CV number 1, which is controlling both the VCF and the VCA. And here the negative output of the ADSR is controlling the pulse width modulation of oscillator number 1. So I want to show you now a patch in which we are using both ADSRs. And I want to create what I personally call the inverted filter patch. So now let's swap these two cables. The negative output is going into the VCF-VCA module, and the positive output is going into the pulse width modulation slot of oscillator number 1. So when I press a key on the keyboard now, there is nothing happening. So what we are going to do now, we are engaging the second ADSR. We take the positive output of that ADSR, plug it here into CV number 2 slot. For the VCA, we turn down the CV1 signal, and then we turn up the CV2 signal. So I also increase the frequency of the filter, and when I press a key on the keyboard now, you can hear this inverted ADSR affecting the filter. So just let me explain again what is happening here. The first ADSR is being inverted and thereby closing the filter and opening it up again according to the shape of the ADSR. And the positive output of the second ADSR is just turning up the volume of the VCA. And now let's take a look at the Ringmodulator, the Modamp Module 1005. So basically, a Ringmodulator in a synthesizer creates unique audio frequencies by multiplying two input signals, producing the sum and the difference of their frequencies. The result usually is a new metallic sound with harmonic richness and complexity. With this sound, you can really create some interesting sci-fi sounds, especially when you add a reverb and a delay. Okay, let me show you how we are quickly going to patch this. we take the output of the VCOs and run them into the Modamp module. Here you have two inputs labeled A and B. The first oscillator is going into input A, and the second oscillator is going into input B. We turn up all the knobs here, increase the strength of the signal, turn on the Ringmodulator, and now we have to take the output of the Ringmodulator and run the signal into input A in the Filtamp module. Okay, now I press a key on the keyboard and you hear some kind of bell sound. I am using sine waves on both oscillators. Now, as I change the frequency on the oscillators, you can hear what is happening. And now let's add some delay and reverb to create some spooky soundscapes. So let's take this a little bit further now. Here on the Ringmodulator we have two knobs labeled ratio and tune. These produce control voltages which we can use to control the frequency of the oscillators which provide the audio signals for the Ringmodulator. So let's take now another cable. We plug it here into the slot labeled CVA and run it into the FM1 input of oscillator number 1. FM stands for frequency modulation, and the control voltage coming out of this CVA slot is modulating the frequency of oscillator number 1 here. We are going to do the same thing with the other oscillator, so we plug a cable into the slot CVB and plug it here into the slot FM1 of oscillator number 2. So with these knobs here, which are labeled FM1, you control the strength of the CV voltage coming into the oscillators, modulating the frequency. And now let's press a key on the keyboard. And we start turning the knobs here, ratio and tune. Let's add some delay. Now let's take a look at the dual noise random voltage generator module 1016. We have noise A and noise B, then we have slow random A and slow random B. So let's listen to the noise first. We take the noise A output and run it into input A of the Filtamp module. So when I press a key on the keyboard, you're not hearing anything. When I turn it to the right to pink noise, you can hear the pink noise. I can change the frequency. In the middle position it's off. When I turn it to the left, you have white noise. White, pink, white, now off. Okay, and now let's use the random voltage generator to create some control voltages which will affect the frequency of this oscillator here. So we unplug the previous connection. Now we take the random A output and plug it here into the FM1 input of this oscillator. Now we make an audio connection of this oscillator. We take the output and plug it into input A of the Filtamp module. Okay, so when I press a key on the keyboard, you hear the sound coming from this oscillator. Now I turn on the slow random switch, I turn it to on, and you can hear how this control voltage, which is being generated randomly, affects the frequency of this oscillator. Now let's talk about the sample and hold module 1036. Here in this module we have two sample and hold generators which can work independently from each other. So for our patch here we are just going to use the first sample and hold generator. A sample and hold module in a synthesizer captures and holds a sample of an input signal. The input signal can be anything and outputs it until it is updated with a new sample. This creates randomized or stepped signals and controlled voltages which then can be used to modulate or control other parts of the synthesizer. To describe it in a simple way, the sample and hold acts like a snapshot of an input signal to control other modules of the synthesizer. The rate at which this is happening is controlled by the clock frequency. Now I am showing you a simple patch to create a sound that you have probably heard already. We are going to use the sample and hold to control the frequency of the filter here. So for this we are going to use a cable, plug it into the sample and hold output, and then plug it here into the CV2 input of the Filtamp module. So I'm pressing a key on the keyboard and you're just hearing the sound. I'm opening and closing the filter manually. So we turn on the clock of the sample and hold module, and at the moment we are not hearing anything happening. We are going to use now the internal random generator of this sample and hold module, and you can hear how the sample and hold module is providing control voltages to the filter. Changing the frequency. Okay, now we have been using the internal random generator, but now we are going to use an external signal. As I told you before, it can be anything. It can be a waveform coming from an oscillator, but now we are going to use the noise generator to provide the input signal for the sample and hold module. So we take here the A output of the noise generator and plug it here into external in. Now I press the key again and I turn up the signal strength, and now the noise generator is providing the input signal to the sample and hold module. Let me change the frequency of the noise. Changing from white noise to pink noise. And you can also mix the two input signals, sorry, not the input signals. You can mix the input signal with the internal random generator. You may have noticed that I have not spoken about the step sequencer and the mix sequencer module yet. I will cover the Behringer 2500 sequencer modules in detail in a separate video. For the moment, suffice it to say that the 2500 analog sequencer modules are also great sidekicks to the Behringer 2600 semi-modular synthesizer. Combining the 2500 sequencer modules with the Behringer 2600 provides a complete analog synthesizer experience with a classic analog workflow. This unique workflow can yield outstanding results, which are very different to the music achieved with digital equipment. If that is something that interests you, then it might be a good time now to subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't done so yet. If you subscribe, my content is more likely to show up in your video feed. Kindly let me know what do you think about the Behringer 2500 modules. Are they a good option for you to start or to expand a Eurorack system? Please leave a comment below. Alright, that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope I see you again in my next video. Until then, take care, stay safe, peace.